The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this particular episode is one of our deep dives, one of our Bacta tanks of talk. We are gonna have a good conversation in the goo. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. I got my back to underwear on, ready to dive in. And this is going to be a great episode as we dive in where I don't even know how I'm working through things. I'm going to be asking myself a lot of questions in this episode.
Ooh, not just a deep dive, a live Star Wars counseling about how we feel. That's great. I cannot wait to get into that. So we're going to get past the stuff that we say at the beginning of the podcast. As always, we want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles, and I bet even more every second to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. This week we are recommending Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. The whole Star Wars universe, or at least most of it, has Kenobi fever. This is a great Kenobi and Qui-Gon and prophecy story. So if you're interested in giving it a listen, you can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. It is a free audiobook for you, and it helps out the show. So with that proclamation out of the way, we can get into this main topic, Ken. I really wanted to talk about, does it matter where the story is told? And I was kind of trying to write down in the notes here all the different reasons that had started to bubble up as being on my mind. And I was kind of shocked by the number of different ways where where does this story exist? Which medium is it happening in? We're in such an interesting time for Star Wars we're very close to watching an Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show that was almost a movie, and the exact fate of Star Wars on big screen, where Star Wars used to live, is still a mystery. Star Wars is kind of firing on all cylinders on television. Many fans are very excited right now about the thriving High Republic books and comics, audios too. Other fans' favorite Star Wars story, if you go looking around on social media right now, is the video game Fallen Order. That's people's Star Wars right now. You and I have been rewatching the Clone Wars and getting to some really big arcs, and I think it's really reminding me how central the overall saga storytelling is that happens in a lot of the animated series. Very important to the overall saga. And plus right now, we also have some major canon moments that have either happened or are about to happen or might be about to happen in books, comics, audio adventures, the return of Kira, the audio about Dooku's fall. Just this week had Obi-Wan meeting Asajj Ventress in a book. We had the excerpt from a book of Luke apparently being visited by the spirit of his father, Anakin Skywalker. Lots of big stuff, lots of storytelling, all happening all over the place. So out of all that, I really wanted to start with the big picture. For you personally, Ken, does it matter where the story is told? Is it lesser for you in any way if a part of the story is in a book, a video game, a comic, a cartoon, etc.?
So I saw this question, started to write down my notes. I went, no, of course it doesn't matter. We're ForceCenter. We engage with the stories that are presented. We try to keep open minds. Our criticisms are, we reworked to be questions and be positive and celebrate what we love. All those things that a lot of you for years have tuned in and continue to tune in for ForceCenter. And then I just realized, Joseph, that's a lie to me. It matters. And without me thinking about it or without me being prepared to admit it, if it's not live action, I naturally think it's lesser than. But that changes. You and I doing this wonderful Clone Wars report rewatch has turned me from, I always loved the Clone Wars. I always did. I always got into it. To now, that's kind of my Star Wars in a lot of ways. Like, I'm so enjoying that run. And I didn't have that. And one of the reasons was, I was like, oh, I love Star Wars and that cartoon. And I'm not one of those, I'm not the Academy who thinks movies, adults have to get, survive through animation. No, I don't love a lot of, I'm not a Toy Story guy. I didn't, a lot of people might know that about me, but no, man, I'm moved by animation. I get it. But anyways, all that to say, I have to be honest. I think we're going to work through Ken's adventures in accepting more storytelling.
Well, that is very intriguing, and I totally understand it. I want to share some big picture thoughts for me, and then I'm going to ask you a follow-up question.
Okay.
I think for me, my gut answer is, in general, it doesn't matter to me. The story is the story. And, I really don't like the what is better than and less than. And I think that's from life experiences and cultural experiences. And, the weird experience of every art form that I've gotten involved in has had people subdivide. When I was in improv and sketch, there was a battle between improv and sketch. When I did more improv, short form versus long form. When I got into storytelling, it was, should it be memorized or is it not storytelling? If you used a music stand, that's not storytelling. Like every little sub art form I've ever gotten involved in continues to subdivide and have a better than, less than, more authentic. It's, it's a trap of, I think, human psychology. And I think because I've had that experience and because I grew up liking things like Star Wars and superheroes and finding value in them and the sometimes attitude in different places where like, well, yes, that's all fine and good, but it's not art. I was talking even on the other day about going to get my degree in visual art at the University of Minnesota and having some teachers who were very supportive and even a very kind, supportive teacher going, too many lines. That's illustration, not art. Use your shapes, Joseph. So I think I have a lot of personal experiences that make me go like, yeah, no, just because it happened in a video game doesn't mean it's less important to the big picture story. But just like you were saying, I realized that I then do have for myself some asterisks to that. And I think one of them is really thinking about, and we'll talk more about this, of it doesn't matter to me is a personal individual fan, but it does matter the fact that a lot more people are going to see a live action television show or movie than play a video game or read a book or read this specific 6-issue arc. And what does that relationship happen? Do I want some things to be on screen, movies or live action television show, so that everybody will see them and know them, and it will be more ingrained in the cultural imagination as a part of the story. So I think I have anxiety, not for myself, but for how accessible are parts of the story to other people. And then the other big asterisk for me is I don't inherently think that screen storytelling is better, but I realize I'm having huge pangs when big moments are coming up in books of like, that's so great. I can't wait. I have utter faith that that's going to be an amazing moment, but I'm bummed that moment won't be on screen. Like we just talked about the great first meeting of Asajj and Obi-Wan. Great, phenomenal, nothing wrong with it. Amazing. Books aren't lesser than. And yet I'm still having this pang of, but it means I probably don't get to see it in live action. Yeah. And that, go ahead.
Continue. No,
please, go ahead.
That's huge to explain what I'm feeling and experiencing. Of even when logic it dictates and your brain is aware that, well, we couldn't have Christopher Lee in that role.
Right.
So, or even, you could recast, but even in your head where you're like, well, we can't do that. It's got to be in a book form. But that's a bummer. That's not right.
But it is like, it is about the having that visual relationship. We had a great question come up in one of our questions of the Force recently where somebody said, I just absorb things better in visual format. It's not about not liking books. It's about, I can get more into the story if I can see it, so there is that just, for some people we're all different and they're more engaged by a complete visual story. So there's that element of it for me. But what I wanted to ask you, Ken, is do you feel like that part of you that's going, hey, it's going to be great in a book. I don't think books are less than. I don't think comics are less than, but I want to see it on the screen. Is that you? Is that your preference? Or do you think it's the cultural baggage that we all have that, or I shouldn't say all, that many of us have, that live action is the T-Rex. It's the alpha. It is what you should aspire to. And that, like, I just think that there is kind of a ranking. Maybe not everybody has it, so I'll just speak for myself. The culture that I have experienced is like live action movies, the top, then live action television, then animated, then books, then comics,
Yes, no, and the reason, and I was laughing when you were sharing some of your real world examples of subdivisions and subdivides, because I'm so against those. So I don't want to be part of that on any level. And I trained at the Groundlings in the early 2000s, a big sketch and improv school. I sat down one classes. The teacher put down a chair and sat in it and said, "You're all here to learn improv, and you've come to the wrong place." He was a teacher. It's like, you want real improv, the long form stuff, you go up the street. We'll teach you some party games and some sketch writing here. And I was like, whoa. And I don't want to be part of that. So we're not here for that. And we dive into, all the books in the middle grade and everything, and all the stories are valuable. But at the end of the day, I think because of my pursuits, screenwriting, and even in town here, animation is viewed less than by unions, the guilds, and when it's great, and a lot of people are fighting against that. It's this wonderful art form, but I just experienced it. I'm a Lord of the Rings movie fan more than anything, the Jackson movies, and in that world, and there's all the Tolkien rights, and the Amazon one has 10% of the, that's a weird world on what you actually own. They're doing an animated movie, and it's in the works for the Rohirrim. From the Two Towers, the Helm's Deep battle, which is like my favorite movie of those. And I went, oh my gosh, it's animated. That's just without thinking about it. And that's not right. And so I think that to long-winded answer your question, Joseph, it's just this natural thing where I'm like, I saw Star Wars on the theater first. If it had been a book that was adapted into the movies, I might have thought differently. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Please, maybe someone read the Star Wars novelization by Alan Dean Foster, quote unquote George Lucas, and thought, they made a movie of this, and then they have different views.
Do you see they made a movie of that book, Star Wars?
Yeah. Anyways, I love these kind of episodes because I'm challenging myself to come up with the actual reasons why I feel this stuff.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I think what I'm hearing, and I could be wrong, is that we're both coming at it from a place of we don't personally, when we examine ourselves, think that like, this is animated, so it's not good, or this is a book, it's not good. But we have a bias inherited from the culture around us that got to acknowledge, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think for me, I want to examine the bias, and if it's a taste thing, if somebody's like, I don't have time to read books or audiobooks and I feel bad missing out on the story, that's like a different thing, right?
Yeah.
But for me, like, I get to read the book, I get to enjoy the story, I get to apply it to great moments that happen in books, I get to apply to when I go back to live action, but there's still that deep, but I want to see it in live action. And it's fun to think about how much of that is cultural bias and how much of that is personal taste.
Yeah, maybe sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. But because I love all the books, I love every time I get a new book, I'm like, oh my gosh, what morsel of Star Wars information is going to be in here for me. But I get busy and I struggle to read. It's not that I have any comprehension issues. I was a big reader as a kid, so that's never been a problem. I just, as an adult, I don't have so much time. I'm so distracted, and I close the books and sometimes go, what happened? What happened now?
Yeah, I mean, so certainly we'll talk about that. Some of it is just about volume of story, right?
Yeah.
So clearly, we want to say it doesn't matter where the story is told. The story is the story. Let's not be like our improv teachers. Let's embrace the story as the story. So in that spirit, we'll continue to examine it. But I want to start with one example for you of a bit of story, canon, lore that is not from a live action movie that is important to you. Now, we're going to talk more examples from the specific mediums in the second half of the podcast, but to frame our conversation and start from a place of positivity, I just wanted us each to share one example of something that's super important to us that doesn't come from a movie.
It would be, I think in the end, I continue to go to Leia, Princess of Alderaan more than any other book. That might end up having to be my answer for a lot of book questions going forward in my Star Wars career. Because it took this character I love, a character that we've studied, a character that's so important to Star Wars, but introduced a new story, brought in new characters, but also showed the lessons of what you learned. And that Tarkin dinner scene is one of the most tension-filled cinematic scenes. But there, I just said it, right? There, I just said it. It's so good because it's cinematic. And I go back to that story a lot, and I want to revisit a lot of Leia, Princess of Alderaan. It's on my mind to kind of reread that again and dig in. And, you get the stuff with Panaka. And it wasn't just about connecting lore. It just was, I was so into the story. I so saw it. I so visualized it. I so was moved by it. Learned things about a character I've grown up with. And that one I go to a lot of just a top example.
Yeah, that's great. There are like at least 4 or 5 different moments from that book that could be the answer to like, that is great Star Wars story. I carry it with me when I rewatch the movies, right? And they enhance it because it's not like the movies never made sense until this book. It's that they enhance the story, because to me, Star Wars is this tapestry that's always being woven. I think for me right now, because all eyes are on Obi-Wan, this is part of what's got me thinking about it. Is I could list so many moments from the Clone Wars as an Obi-Wan Kenobi fan. But the Twin Suns episode of Rebels, we've talked about it a ton, so I don't need to get into breaking down the actual scene. I think for me, the reason it pops is it is making me think every moment of Star Wars matters. It is such this vital piece going into this live action Kenobi show. And the live action Kenobi show is something that is going to bring a lot of casual Star Wars fans, back to the screen. Maybe they've been keeping up with Mandalorian, but this is so big because it's such central characters. It's so central to the saga. It's Obi-Wan and Vader. And there's that part of me that, like, I feel bad for anybody who doesn't have time or inclination to check out the Twin Sun scene, because the question of the live action show is, how does Kenobi go from the end of Revenge of the Sith to this peace and purpose in that scene of Twin Suns, explicitly to that belief that Luke is the chosen one? This is why it's on my mind as being so vital. It's one half of the question. It's the answer to why this show exists. It's one of the answers. But for me, like, one of the most compelling answers to why this Kenobi show exists is that scene from an animated show that that Obi-Wan, Kenobi, and Darth Maul were not the whole point of. They just popped up in. So that's got to be my answer, the Twin Sun scene right now.
Absolutely. I mean, we reference that one a lot because it's so valuable, so important, so great.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you feel about fans who maybe don't have the time, or aren't book readers for whatever reason, don't have time to listen to audios, the comics are too expensive, whatever it is, for fans who don't or can't absorb all this material? Do you ever worry about them feeling left out of the grand tapestry?
Yes. And I'm happy to try to connect them to that tapestry. I'm happy to try to put the strings, but I see sometimes the amount of glazed eyes just grows and grows and grows. And then it's in a book, and the shrug that follows kind of adds up from them, And it's which is again why the conflict in our initial answer. I'm like, no, you must value. Have you played Battlefront 2? Oh my gosh, I just said that like 2 weeks ago to someone. You got to go into the story. It's short, and that would, a lot of people complain about that, but it's great. Loved it. I love seeing the defense when a lot of people were like, could we see Maul and Kenobi have their final matchup? And everyone was like, no, it's Rebels. It's in Rebels. So there for those conversations. But I also, it's more for the people who just don't have the time to absorb all the material. I totally get it. And I just do worry about them getting so overwhelmed and feeling left out. They just won't and just don't dig in.
Yeah, I think that's it for me. Is like, we have a Star Wars podcast. We're lucky enough to do that, and we try to absorb everything, and we still can't absorb absolutely everything, right?
Yeah.
So I do really feel for fans who want to engage, right? Sometimes you run into the snarky thing that you're talking about, where like, I'll tell somebody about Bloodline, how what a great job Bloodline does, kind of setting up the political realities of the New Republic going into the general sequel trilogy era, and get the same thing of like, oh, they didn't answer it in the movie, so they had to do this book to fix it. And like, no. The movies, in my opinion, are designed to be tip of the iceberg storytelling, and then books and comics can explore the iceberg, right? So I want everybody to have that opportunity. I think maybe what the thing I'm reacting to is like, a lot of the books, like Leia Princess of Alderaan, has some vital canon that I love, but it fleshes out everything that you can see about who Leia is in the movies, right?
Yeah.
And then when we're getting some moments like Luke Skywalker communing with Anakin, possibly, it's such a big moment that fans have wanted for such a long time, right?
Yeah.
And it makes me feel really bad that maybe it isn't accessible to everybody. I think that's what it is. There's a part of me of like, I just want to see that on screen. I don't care if it's animated, I want to see it on screen for myself just because I want to enjoy it, because it's a fresh moment of canon. It's new. It's not just sort of enhancing, supporting, adding context to what exists. It's doing all those things, but it's also like a major canon moment, I feel that same way. I don't know if Brotherhood is going to deal with the adventure or the moment where Anakin is knighted, but I kind of feel that way too, of like, can we just make that animated movie?
Yeah.
That one off? Because like that's to me, this is where I'm really getting into my Star Wars nerdery. That's an important piece of canon. The moment he became a knight, we still don't have the story of when and how he went and made the Skywalker saber, that journey to get that Kyber crystal, and I think for me that it is my a little bit of my pangs about that. Again, not about the quality of the storytelling in the books. I love the books. The authors are amazing. The storytelling group does an amazing job. It's about wanting it to be accessible to as many people as possible. And I think that's where the pang comes from.
Yeah, which is why when a lot of times, Mando and Boba Fett bringing in other characters and even some moments and stuff in a way, I get the, hey, we had to do it this way and had to make some changes, and I don't hold on to the stories, but it is a little bit of that, like, you missed the story. So following you down that path and following you towards the pangs of, but so many people are going to miss it, and it's so good. How do we correct that, or do we have to live with that? We might just have to live with that.
Learn to live with that. I guess the more hopeful answer to this is it is a fun cycle, right? When Chrysanthemum pops up and everybody's like, all right, here are the key Chrysanthemum episodes, or, issues of comic books that you can just look up, I got a very nice tweet this weekend. You and I did in ForceCenter about, hey, I'm really excited for the Kenobi show. What do you think are like the key Kenobi arcs in Clone Wars? And it can be a fun mission if a fan is like, I don't have time to read all of it. But when something pops up in live action or even an animated show that goes, okay, can you tell me how to follow the complete story of Panaka? And be like, I guess that is the positive side of it, is instead of absorbing everything, fans do have the opportunity to go on specific missions.
Yeah. And there's some argument for, hey, when you bring in a character that someone knows, they might go search other media. Then it kind of feels like a business decision, which is not bad at all. We're trying to keep this stuff profitable and going. I get that. But so I'm behind that idea too. And it is fun. And it's fun to even kind of go back on those journeys, even if you've already taken them, of, I need to get ready for Kenobi. What are things I need to watch to get ready for Kenobi?
Yeah, what do I need to refresh on? Yeah, I mean, I always need to refresh on the Inquisitors, because their story happens everywhere. So how do you handle it for yourself personally when there's something coming up that you are not caught up with or familiar with?
So this is starting the comic discussion, right? And look, and particularly High Republic, where they do such a great job, and you never feel, and that's the thing, you never feel like you're missing something, but you just have to acknowledge that I don't understand that yet. So I just kind of shove it into a corner and deal with it later. Just like, all right, that happened here. I'll just when I need to, I got to trust that the story goes on, and the creators and the company is going to make sure that I do not have to read every comic to understand this chapter of the novel, right? Like,
right.
But I just know that put it on a shelf. It's kind of it's future storytelling or something for me. It's always going to be there for me to revisit. And but I have to admit, then I kind of don't recognize it as official story until I get there. Does that make sense? Even like some of the stuff with
hard.
Yeah, even some with the Crimson Dawn. We're going to get into the Kira of it all soon in a bit, but like I was seeing, I as I said before on the show, I can't get to my comic shop. I still collect comics, not the digital stuff. I can't get to my comic shop anymore regularly, so I just naturally have a wall up to the comics. And then I saw some of the Kira stuff breaking. It was spoiled for me, but again, I guess it's spoiled when you're not going to get to the stories for 2 months. And I just was like, all right, I don't count it yet. I'll count it when I read it. Then I'll believe it.
Yeah, I mean, there is for me, like every once in a while, I have to acknowledge that there's some storytelling out. Like, I finally got caught up on Vader and saw some of the most recent run of Vader and saw some of the Sabe stuff.
Right.
And
right.
it can be hard when a question comes in, like, well, here are all my thoughts. Unless maybe there's something about Sabe. I don't know.
Yeah.
You got a Sabe question. I'm not entirely, caught up. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously our friends Alex and Molly do an amazing job with Star Wars Explained, and that is just a great, great resource, I think, for people who want to stay caught up. And you can just Google if they have a specific video. I've watched the various Inquisitor videos from Star Wars Explained multiple times. Extremely helpful. I do like doing deep dives on Wikipedia. I think that is another great resource. Specifically when there's like something like there's a bell that goes off, like, I know that's connected to Legends, but I didn't read as many of those books. So what is it? And like that kind of stuff. And for me, I'm the same on the comics of I wait until the collected version is out. And there can be like, especially when something big breaks and there can be a lot of articles and stories and reactions. I just so enjoy reading a little bit more of the completed story and trying to process it for myself.
Yeah. There's some of that too. I don't binge TV shows that much, but to binge read it's a little better for me. Take it in better. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just if anybody's listening and feeling like it's hard to keep up, I think we relate to that. And again, we have a Star Wars podcast.
Yes.
And it's still hard to keep up with everything. So there is this argument that you and I have alluded to that the movies should stand on their own. We're now in this place where Star Wars is really on Disney Plus, on television shows. Do you think Mandalorian is standing on its own or requires you to know the tapestry a little bit more? Do you think shows like Ahsoka in particular will stand on its own, or should should it be like, hey, you can absolutely understand the emotional beats of everything happening in this show. You can follow along, but if you want to know who that character is and the history of that weapon and the significance of that look, then we refer you to the tapestry. How do you feel about all that?
I think going to the business side of it, I think it has to, right? I think we'd all agree on that. It has to stand on its own. The Chrysanthemum one is a great example of, actually, Cobb Vanth before that, of, there was not a lot in that Cobb Vanth episode that the episode itself said, you should check out the comic. It just was there. The discourse had to take care of the rest. Chrysanthemum and Fett had a couple moments where you could tell there was some history, but they don't sit down and talk about the fights they've been in or anything, nothing before. So I think that's
some viewers even interpreted that as not paying enough homage to how much of a history they have.
Right. I thought Garza Whip's speech was the most, the most canon-filled acknowledgement of Chrysanthemum's past. But I think that's kind of the right way to do it, unless you need to go further. Unless Chrysanthemum and Fett needed to sit down and be like, hey, remember this moment. I don't think you need to. So, but then there's this thing I mentioned earlier, but it needs to connect to lore argument. Never fully takes for me. I do understand it. I do understand if you go, hey, here's Chrysanthemum, you want to learn more, then go buy the other stories that we have for you if you'd like. The tapestry. And the tapestry costs money, and that's okay. And I'm not saying it cynically, but to me, a new story connects to lore simply because it exists. New characters are not, and so I go from that side, which doesn't mean I don't want connections. Clearly, I'm someone who loves a specific era a lot, the rebellion versus the empire, and even the build up to the rebellion against empire. Some people don't love that, but some people seem to actively fight new characters and new beats, and I don't like that. So that's why, to the big question there, I want these shows to continue to stand on their own while being part of the larger universe.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And we've already seen like how much like a new character gets introduced and then they show up, a couple years later a lot, and people are like, oh, we're seeing so much of this character. Like new becomes old very, very quickly, to that sort of lore perspective argument that you're talking about. I think it is fascinating to see which characters. Well, let me take a step back. I think Mandalorian works just fine without knowing the tapestry. The first season in particular, I think the only thing you're getting into real look it up territory is the Darksaber, of like,
Yeah.
You can see that and go, ooh, he has a weird, scary lightsaber thing, and you get the emotional implications. But if you want to dive into the tapestry, you could. I think the second season got into more of that, and I think Book of Boba Fett had that too. But I think all these stories, the arcs of the characters, what they care about, their emotional journey is clear and strong. So I think that's good, and I think that will continue. I think it has to continue, to your point of you have to be able to just watch this and nothing else. That said, there are the different kinds of stories. Black Chrysanthemum was like, you don't need to read anything, right? It enhances it, but his role in his relationship is entirely clear. Same thing with Cobb Vanth, right? You know everything you need to know, but then you get to like the armorer's speech while she is reforging the spear into Grogu's Beskar chainmail little shirt. That's like Armorer could have turned to the camera and said, watch these episodes of Clone Wars. This episode of Rebels. I am also throwing shade at Satine, Duchess Satine. I mean, you didn't need any of it. You're given the context, and I think Din is such a powerful character because Din is so ignorant that Din doesn't know Star Wars, right? And it's so much fun because it does make these things kind of work. Because he's like, he's asking the armor now, what should I watch the Clone Wars in chronological order or broadcast order? Like, he doesn't know, which is really funny. But I guess to me, the point is like, sometimes there's a character of like, we need a scary bounty hunter who opposes a Boba Fett, but then becomes an ally. Like, great, we got one. You don't need anything, right? Right. But then the armorer's speech is like a old, comic book with the asterisk from the editor of check out these episodes. Totally. You don't need them, but they're far more powerful if you have some of that context and know, like, did she just bleep talk Duchess Satine? It's there's a different power.
Totally is, and I think that you're talking about that balance, and you're talking about a lot of people just don't need those details, but the spirit, the emotional canon is what we talk about often. But a lot of times that came out of just like the core issues of the core themes of Star Wars and how they're attached to the story, but not to have these characters kind of syncing up with the needs of the story in the big picture. I love that there. And the armor one's a great example. It was a checklist indeed.
Yeah. And even going to like Bo-Katan in the second season, I think that was obviously richer if you knew her story, but you could also totally process it just from Din's perspective of meeting a different Mandalorian. And in fact, a very important Mandalorian, and realizing who has to gently tell him, you're part of a cult.
Yeah.
Obviously richer if you know Bo-Katan, but if you're just processing this, exploring via Din, it works.
Yeah, and then I had a couple experiences with some people who are not familiar with Bo-Katan going, "Who's that? I don't like her." And I'm like, you're supposed to. I think you're supposed to like it. Well, I don't.
Well, let's watch her first episode where she terrorizes a village. Yeah, okay, all right. She makes better choices. Yeah. I'm so fascinated with Ahsoka because obviously Ahsoka grows from animated shows, from Clone Wars, from Rebels. The one Ahsoka book is a very crucial part of her path. But I think that they absolutely will make the show totally accessible, which leads me to ask you about Ahsoka. Do you think that, like, Mandalorian has the function that Din doesn't know these things, so he needs them explained, so therefore the audience learns about them. It's part of his character. Do you think there's going to be any device like that in Ahsoka? Do you think there will be flashbacks? Do you think that she will encounter a sidekick who doesn't know Ahsoka canon?
Yeah, that's a great point. And we know the Anakin of it all, right? Hayden, that would lead me to believe that I would think stories, some scenes. I always hesitate to say flashbacks now, but some scenes in the Clone Wars era, another time to help frame a little bit of it too, especially because it's Ahsoka in a new timeline. Is there, so I think it was that. But yeah, I think you're going to have. Oddly enough, it's funny. You're going to have Ahsoka's going to have an Ahsoka. Meaning little Snips shows up and is our guide through the Clone Wars era during this time. Yes, we know all these characters, but without a doubt, she's the entry point character for a lot of people. Yeah. A lot of fans. So I think Ahsoka herself might need an Ahsoka.
Yeah. But I think if you are the kind of fan who hasn't watched the animated series, is interested in what we're calling the tapestry, there's a great targeted rewatch list of Clone Wars and Rebels to enhance the Ahsoka experience. Enhance.
And look, Disney Plus does a great job. And by the way, I pay every month for the subscription, so I'm just saying this out of the kindness of my heart. They're so good. You log in. Here's some key Ahsoka episodes, and they have a whole list of Rebels and Clone Wars episodes for you to watch. They have the Vader collection, and they're going to be able to add more. And I'm sure you'll see an Obi-Wan pop up too. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very excited for that. So I think we've already talked a little bit about this, but I do want to make sure that I get your thoughts. I'm challenged by the big moments happening in books and comics, like we talked about, not because I dislike print or think they're less than, but I feel that pull for them to be experienced on screen and wanting more people to know them. Do you think that's where any of your feeling comes from, that you want more people to experience them and think that will happen if it's on screen?
Yeah, almost. Yeah. This is where I'm really with you on it. I think I go to Kira more than any character, because it's a character that I love, you love, we love, so many people love. And then the rumors of what could have been, or ideas, and then Disney Plus pops up, and suddenly the world of possibilities of characters getting their own shows. And she was always on the list. She does come back, and she comes back in a comic run. And it's good. Like I finally finished the run. The War of the Bounty Hunters didn't hit for me on a lot of levels, but now we got the Crimson Reign comic. Kira's back, man. I'm so thrilled. I also didn't touch that comic book for 2 months, and it still kind of doesn't feel right. And I still almost think it doesn't count. And that's be really heavy to admit. I'm just like, yeah, this is great stuff. And you have like Kevin Scott and all these big people behind it, behind all these War of the Bounty Hunter stories. I could still see a Disney Plus series coming and kind of wiping some of that away.
Charles Soule, right?
Charles Soule. Did I say Kevin Scott? I was thinking about Jackson. Yeah, you're right, Charles Soule. Yeah, you know what I mean? And I'm saying this, I'm like admitting the fault here. Like, I'm just like, I was not super excited about her coming back in a comic book. But it's there. And I think when I'm ready to really go back and revisit it again, I've read every issue now, but when I want to, maybe I'll go back and take it in with a different mindset, and letting go of detaching from it has to be live action. Emilia Clarke has to be in that role. Now I can just appreciate the character and maybe get over that disappointment and get over myself to find what's in the story.
I think maybe that is a great way to talk about it for me. I think there's the desire to have the kind of big, important story beats as accessible as possible. But I think it is about availability for the story to be told on screen. Like, I think the reason that like maybe some of the big beats around the Clone Wars, like Obi-Wan meeting Asajj, Anakin's knighthood, and maybe Scar being in a book, because those actors are actively doing Star Wars right now. And a lot of that story was told in animation, so that continues to be a possibility. Same thing with we're breaking the barrier with having Luke on screen. Let's have him talk to Anakin on screen. So I think the fact that it's possible gives me more, makes me wrestle with it more. And in particular with Kira, like Charles Soule is amazing. One of my favorite writers. I'm so glad that he loves Kira and fought to put her in this continuity and flesh her out. But I think maybe it is just also, age of just like Emilia Clarke can be Kira for about, can play her in this exact era for 20 years. Or 30 years, whatever. Maybe with digital technology, forever. But you know what I mean? I think the anxiety is I want every Kira story we can possibly get. I don't want to make it impossible to tell a live action story with Emilia Clarke, because I think she's a phenomenal actor and she's alive. It's different with like Tarkin, because 100%.
Well, we had the discussion before anything was solidified with Kenobi, rumors of the movies and whatnot, where I remember you saying with kind of that same level of urgency of Ewan McGregor is literally the perfect age. We have this moment. We need to take it. Please
the moment.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
I think
it is. Yeah.
So many fans have had, sometimes expressed politely, sometimes not at all polite, of
not at all.
wanting more with the original trilogy characters in the sequel, or wanting scenes with them together. And you do have that, like, what if it was a different world? And Lucas was like, wrap Revenge of the Sith, 2008, here comes,
Yeah.
So there is that reality when there's an actor who is tied to the character to be like, now is the time,
Exactly. Yeah. And I want to just, make sure I'm clear. Like, love that Charles Soule, love Kira, love that the character's back and we have it. And sometimes nothing is, something's better than nothing, right? Which is, again, sounds like I'm slagging off those comics. I'm not, but it just, I remember because, again, it got spoiled for me. And when I saw that was the character coming back, I literally went, all right. I could not like, yeah, Kira's back. And I went, okay, all right, yeah, I'll head to the comic shop next week then, I guess. Versus an announcement of Emilia Clarke is Kira, which is, who knows?
Yeah. And I haven't, I have read many spoilers, but I got to download those comics into the now, what I'm told is broken app, and I have not dealt with that yet. So there's that fun anxiety for reading them online. But yeah, it's nothing like we were talking about. It's nothing against the storytelling or the medium. It's about that desire to make sure there's still room to tell those stories, some of those stories on screen. As long as we can someday get Kira versus Maul, Crimson Dawn Disney Plus show.
Be great. And again, I want to make sure I get out of my own way, right? I want to get out of my own way to enjoy what's there. And we are here. We're lucky enough to celebrate this big tapestry, as we keep calling it. And it's just a reminder. But again, as we said at the top of this episode, having to face some dark truths about myself.
Yeah, well, we have done some wrestling with the dark side, staying positive. We're going to take a quick break, and then we are going to talk about some specific moments in specific mediums. I'm sure we have a little wrestling left to do, but there's also going to be a lot of celebrating of the absolutely great, crucial moments of storytelling that happen all over the Star Wars tapestry in every medium. All of that in just a moment. We are back to continue our discussion of Does It Matter Where the Star Wars Story is Told? We have had conflicting answers, even in our soul. So we're going to explore more of that. We're going to talk about the different mediums. Ken, why do you think the animated series, plural, have become such an important place for Star Wars storytelling? I think with all the discussions you can have about books and comics and video games and all sorts of different places where storytelling has, I don't think many people would argue that some of the storytelling in Clone Wars, in Rebels, and even Resistance isn't essential. So why do you think they've become such an important place for storytelling?
I'll start here. They're really great. And but meaning the quality is the start of it. If they weren't good, you could toss them aside, right?
Right.
And now you have a lot of fans constantly championing them from many different generations of fandom, many different ages, many different backgrounds. I have had many conversations with friends like, no, I know what you're saying. You got to give Clone Wars a chance. Or I know what you're saying. Stick through season 1. I know there's some things that maybe are a little harder to get through. The show grows, the show matures. Rebels, a great example. I still have some folks who never seen Rebels. We even have some listeners who are very open-hearted and are doing rewatches and posting about it in our Discord or even first time through Rebels of, I never did get past season 1. I'm going to, and the reward is great. And I think I love that, but it's good. It has to be good. I think that's the biggest thing for me. And there's something, I don't know about the animation at all. Maybe you can help me through that side, but I'll say there's something about long form storytelling and how that has just become the preferred method for fandoms overall. Doesn't mean, and this isn't about movies not being in theaters versus streaming. I'm just talking big event television has been around now for 20 years, but really the last 10, 15 years is when it really exploded, and people just want and feel, whether right or wrong, they just feel you get more out of them. And Rebels really falls in that. Clone Wars is from a different era, but Rebels right in the center of that 2014. And the people that were rewarded, the people that were there on board, got to grow with those characters, got to change, got to cry, got to feel success, got to celebrate. So at the end of it, you just felt like you were in it, man. Versus Solo was great. I don't know, just it just went through the world. They didn't save the world, you know. We love Solo here. So the Rise of Skywalker. But even I say it, like, at the end of the day, I'm glad we're getting a Kenobi TV series and not a movie, because I now get to spend 6+ hours with Kenobi and not 2.
Yeah, I think it's maybe the movie versus longer form storytelling is maybe about as audience tastes change, we want to just plain spend more time with characters, but we also just want to know more, right? Like there's, you know, working on multiple scripts for both TV shows and movies. Movies are an art of, like, all sorts of questions are left unanswered. We paint a portrait of who this character is in this moment, and then, hey, audience, it's up to you to guess what formative child moment they had, or what's their favorite meal, or did they ever resolve things with that one side character? Do we ever learn why his aunt hates him? Like, movies are designed to be a snapshot in a world. And I think we've really just become, particularly with genre fandom, a audience who wants as many answers as we can possibly have. And I think that the longer storytelling allows us to not just spend quality time with characters, but to explore everything about them, right? Satine's art isn't just like a side detail to give her, some extra identity. And in the Rebels 2-hour movie, that's an ensemble movie, we get to explore that aspect of her life, along with her aspect as a Mandalorian, as this, as that. You know, there's so much more room to explore the characters.
And this is a different podcast. We will start Movie Center. Now we have all these big event movies are 3 hours. I just think even the creators, like, what if we just put 2 more scenes to explain her art, as opposed to just being something that you pick up in the background on page 3 of the screenplay that we know we have to get in there. You know what I mean? And I don't know if we'll ever go back. And I have by the way, no problem with this. I look, how many times do I not shut up about Game of Thrones? Because I got to spend 73 hours with these characters. I love that. So I think that's the big reason. But then again, because it's good. It's good content, and that's why.
Yes. I think that is a very good answer. Back to the original question about the animated series that, I think it's fascinating that they've become such an important place. And I think because they're good is a great answer. But it's also, I think, obviously Filoni, but Lucas as the creator of Star Wars, the one saying, hey, what do I want to do with this animated show? I think is just a huge, can't be underestimated fundamental shift for Lucas to go from, I let people do the books and the comics and all of his quotes about that's their Star Wars and they have fun. And the dabbling that I've done in Star Wars is it's R2 and 3PO and they have adventures, and it's Ewoks, they have adventures. For Lucas to finish the prequels and then go, you know what? I want to spend more time with the essential main characters of my saga and introduce new ones. But starting from that point of, you know what? Animation, an animated series doesn't have to be the little side adventures, this doesn't have to be Zam Wessel's bounty hunting adventures because we're just following a side character. No, and that is not a dig against Zam Wessel, just an example of a character with a smaller role. The idea that we could tell essential truths of the story. We could paint the picture of exactly how the Jedi Order fell. We could give humanity to the clones and make them, it's this great sense of why not, right? Of why does an animated series have to be not as important in terms of storytelling? Like, I think in some ways Clone Wars answers the question of this episode of our podcast of Lucas saying, I don't need side characters and follow their little side adventure in the Clone Wars. It's the main story of the Clone Wars with a lot of new characters, but also the main characters of the movies. I think that changed everything, right?
Really, really did.
especially if you go back and watch droids and Ewoks, which are fun, but like just from an entirely different world than the Clone Wars, which broke it wide open too. This is just as important as what happens in the movies.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I'm thinking about the Clone Wars one too, where I just remember in the early days staring at Kenobi on screen in animated form and thinking, whoa, like I'm watching a Kenobi. That's Kenobi. Like I'm watching a Kenobi story, and I was blown away by that. So I think you're right. That was a huge change in the landscape. Whereas like Rebels, we know where Rebels goes, right? And then even Ahsoka, Vader, Inquisitors, Kenobi, Maul. You know, if that was made in 1997, it just would have been Ezra and Chopper.
Yeah, and they never would have met any of those other big characters. Most likely, yeah.
And
I think, and I think to your point, Boba Fett showed up in Droid, so I don't want to. I don't want to slander Droids, the cartoon. But I think to your point, also, just I think there's something about Star Wars that it grows partially from serialized storytelling. So I think the fact that you can kind of have cliffhangers week to week of how they're going to get out of this one. They're not really framed that way. They aren't the super big serial, although sometimes I'd be like it if like, how will Ezra survive this challenge? I'd like that sometimes. But without being as direct cliffhanger, it still got that feeling of serialized storytelling.
I absolutely agree with that.
So what is a favorite moment for you? Story, canon, lore? What's a favorite moment that is important to the tapestry of Star Wars to you that comes from an animated series?
Yeah, so I think this was when I was going to mention some of my twins' son stuff, but I'm going to broaden that out here. The biggest to me is the long play with Maul. It's still even especially because we're doing the Clone Wars report rewatch. It still baffles me on some level that it worked at all, let alone so great. Testament to everyone, including George, going, bring him back. But everyone who made that happen, including Whitworth, the way he voiced everything. It's insane to me. And there's that thing that was going with, I think our buddies at Star Wars Minute did something with Paul F. Tompkins on air. That clip went around of Paul F. Tompkins learning that Maul came back and had spider legs. And it was hilarious. Yeah. It was, I have a sense of humor about it too. And you and I joke about the spider legs too. But seriously, to go from that to what we end up with him dying in the arms of Kenobi and tears in all of our eyes, that's insane to me that they pulled that off.
Right. That is a great example of, it's not just little sub-adventures. It is this character who in 1999 was the face of Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
On his face plastered on almost every surface that could have a face applied to it, right?
Yeah.
From Taco Bell to towels, Maul, right? Couldn't be more of a symbol of the movies, and then becomes this rich, full character with this long, fascinating life in animated form.
They long play it. So it's such a long play. And they didn't know, right? With the Clone Wars series, there's no thoughts that Disney's going to buy it, that this thing called streaming is going to, none of that. So they rolled with the punches. They adapted and they kept it going, and they found a way to make it connect and all work. And that's a big success for me. That's a big overall one.
Yeah. Paul F. Tompkins, very funny guy. I've got to hang out with him a little bit. One of my a funny thing about kind of what we're talking about in Paul F. Tompkins is he did a voice on Resistance at one point, and then on Twitter he got, I don't know what made him think this, but he had tweeted something. I was like, I guess I was on a cartoon, so I guess I'm being told I'm not canon. So I tweeted him. It's like, the episode was great. You did a great job in your canon. And it kind of, it struck me as like the 21st century existential crisis that we all have of like, am I canon or am I legends? Is my story valid? Does it actually belong in the tapestry of storytelling?
I definitely feel as though I'm expanded universe, but that weird one-off comic issue that everyone's like, did you know there was a crab? He was like a crab. He had crab arms, and he was a rebel officer. Did you know that guy? Oh, Sergeant Krabby. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is really weird to think of that as like the way that Paul F. Tompkins very comically reacted to. He came back and had spider legs. Like, people would be like, Ken Napzok was a security manager at a mall? Is that canon? There's not Legends Ken Napzok.
I just had that conversation this weekend at the show. Somebody. Yeah, that's I know. So I see you. You look like you're standing on watch. I said, well, let me tell you why.
Yeah. Great stuff to be needed to be canon. We all ask sometimes, am I canon? Yeah, that is such a great answer. I was having a hard time kind of containing myself to one thing because there's so much essential storytelling that happens. Everything from like major events, character arcs like Maul, to just building out the world. I think one of the things that I love about the animated shows, they had that great spirit of why not, of we're going to talk about big, deep things, but Star Wars pulls from so many sources and we can play with that. Of like, there's always the implication that anything is possible through the Force, and everybody is after these different weird secret temples and objects. And for Rebels to do the World Between Worlds and go like, well, here's one of them, you know?
Yeah.
Like just that world building is one example to me that's super important. It's a big, the galaxy of Star Wars is a big, wild, strange world, and I love the moments we're reminded of that. A couple other quick examples. I don't want to be over Obi-Wan focused, but the existence of Satine, you know, Satine as a character, the idea of somebody who tried to take a society that it was destroying itself because of its absolute allegiance to domination being what defines you and gives you value. To have that character, she is important and fascinating by herself. And then to have the relationship with Obi-Wan and to see the Jedi as truly, truly complex people. And Satine is such an important part of that. So I put her really high on one of the most important characters and ideas in an animated series.
Yeah, so I'm right there with you on that because I put the love story that wasn't, if you will, but it's a love story of Satine and Kenobi. But that's one of, not even a specific moment, but definitely her existence. And you said it so well, just this wonderful character that also had this relationship with Kenobi. That's one of the ones I wish I could pluck out and insert into people's minds who haven't watched this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, oh gosh, you know what? The Duchess Satine, such a great guy. I just wish I could grab a wizard wand and pull a memory out and put it into you. Cause I want y'all to experience the Maul stuff's great. And I get the joke, but he moved past the spider legs. Trust me, it gets better. But the Satine and Obi-Wan one is so powerful and so wonderful and so sweet and so tragic. Yeah. I wish you all could experience it.
Yeah. Other one I'm going to throw out there and limit myself is I think they have such power to take things from the movies that you can kind of infer and give them such life and such specificity. I think all the time about the story of the Clone Wars is that people had legitimate problems with the Republic because it had started to become decrepit and Palpatine had made it even worse on purpose. So these people who had legitimate concerns and they thought they were following the political idealist Dooku and they were being manipulated by a Sith Lord. That's implied in the crawl of Revenge of the Sith of heroes on both sides. So then for the Clone Wars to be able to actually do an episode called Heroes on Both Sides, right?
Yeah.
And you can see the face of that story. I love when the animated series can do things like that.
Yeah. That. And then I guess the flip side of that is anytime Padme can give a big speech.
Yes. I mean, Padme's perspective is made so much clearer. Her literal list of political agenda of the bills she is trying to pass and why. Incredibly important. Anyway, we are going to move on so we can cover the other media as well. Let's talk about books. Starting with Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Star Wars has expanded the story in books. That's been a big part of its history. So do important moments in books ever feel buried to you? Do they feel like hidden treasure? We talked about this a little bit of wanting to see them on screen and wanting to make them accessible. But I guess maybe... so we talked about it from a negative perspective. So let me ask it from a positive perspective. Do they ever feel like hidden treasure that you feel like, ooh, I can't believe I found this great truth buried in this secret tome?
Yeah, no, hidden treasures is absolutely the way to look at it. And it is fun. And it is fun when it's number one, it's fun when I remember them. Sometimes I'm like, wait, what was revealed there? I just gotta have an Excel sheet of all the big reveals or things I love in books. I mentioned Leia, Princess of Alderaan, and that's a good example. I mentioned like that Tarkin dinner scene. I did with the food author Dan Whalen. We did a Star Wars ranked about food scenes in Star Wars, right? I forgot about that. I even wrote them after. I was like, I can't believe I forgot about the Tarkin one. I think I had to insert it last minute, if I remember correctly. I had to like up my list or something. And it's just such a great scene because it was, these books have it's so much content, so many pages that they just kind of naturally become hidden treasures, and it's just kind of fun. It's kind of fun to review that and go back. So I think that that's the right way to look at it.
Yeah, it's really, I think I've had that really moments where I really enjoy not just the stories of the book, but feeling like I am being rewarded for being immersed in this world, right? And it isn't like I pat myself on the back, I'm so clever. It's just like I enjoy it, literally, as a person. If I never had a podcast or never told another person about it, when I'm reading like Rebel Rising and really enjoying it, and it's getting closer to when it's going to tie up with Rogue One, but there's this real specific effort to leave a bunch of room for Jyn adventures. And it just kind of casually lists some of the places that she hangs out. And one of them is Takadana. Like, that's not even like that's not a deep lore thing. Right, it's one of the big planets from that big movie, right? But just the kind of the imagination that sparks, just that one line, right? Of knowing, there's that possibility there. I love those moments of what other stories are created. What other possibilities of stories are created.
Yeah, I love that. I love the for some reason you made me think of like when I think it's Dark Disciple, like Dengar's in a bar and there's like, Dengar's here. Yeah, love it.
Yep. You'll love to see it. You love to see Dengar in a bar. It just tracks. So what is or are favorite moments of story canon lore that happen in books?
When we were talking about the hidden treasures, I immediately went to Lords of the Sith by Paulus Kemp, which I think is a hidden treasure of a book because it was so early in the canon run that I don't think a lot of people either didn't read it or just don't remember it. It was so good. But one of the things I loved about it is like, that's the first spot that I heard Darth Vader, the Vader that I know and I guess love, I don't know, that Vader, mention Ahsoka and have a memory of Ahsoka. So when the ship is crashing.
Right.
And it shook me in a positive way and to this point, to this whole conversation we're having, and it's a book, and talking about an animated series, but it was like, to me, the first time that I felt Vader was acknowledging that show I watched.
Yes, there's that specific memory of like the last time that he was above this planet. And it's a specific episode of Clone Wars in a specific moment. And it's that validation that you have. And also it's great storytelling because that's that tension of like, you remember your entire life and you pull from it, but you also deny it. And imagining being in that place, that he has to be in. So there's it's rich as a story and a character moment, but also like totally like, like Vader just gave a positive review of Clone Wars on Letterboxd,
He did. Snips. Yeah. And now it's almost commonplace. And, Rebels, they meet and all these things. It was the first big one out of the gate. We're still dealing with new canon. Clone Wars is still fresh in our minds, but it was like, how are they going to connect? And Ahsoka, clearly this is before season 7 had happened of Clone Wars, the Clone Wars saved. How does Ahsoka factor into that character we know? And that we've all lived with for so long. It blew me away. Love that. And I love that book. Can't recommend that book enough. It's kind of wild and weird. It has creatures chasing Palpatine and Vader. We have Imperial World Guards in action and Ryloth and all this stuff. It's really good. I can't recommend that one enough if you haven't taken a dive.
Yeah, a lot of those Twilight characters are ones that like, that character pops up here and then later in this book and then on this animated series. That is a great one if you love, the tapestry connections being, all over the place. And there's been a lot more comics that have dealt with this, but I remember when Revenge of the Sith, first came out, it's like, okay, so then this is just it for Vader. Like, at the time I thought like, well, the rebellion doesn't really get going for a while, right? So like, is Vader just standing by Palpatine's side while Palpatine's telling him his favorite foods? Like, and to get that picture of like, oh, of course, it's the constant testing. The constant prove yourself to the dark side, It's, man, it's almost a different conversation. Yeah. But I remember having to learn that, especially in the early Vader comics of the modern run. When I say learn that, of just like, I grew up kind of thinking what you thought. Vader turned sides, changed teams, all good. We meet with him again in New Hope. Like he got a new job. He took it, got a new uniform. He's good. got 19 years of just tedium, which is obviously not true. Now, many great stories and powerful stories, because it is made explicit in some of these more recent Vader runs of Palpatine going like, I have to keep teaching him the cycle of the dark side. Love it.
And I remember early in the comics just going, oh, the comic is teaching me this, and I love it.
Yeah. Man, that's a great example. You alluded to this. I think it is going to be always my all-time favorite canon from books, which is spread out across multiple books, but it is the and movies, but it is the epic saga of Panaka, right? You see him in Phantom Menace, and he could be like, he does some exposition work along with the many from Sio Bibble to Rick Ollier to Panaka, all doing some heavy exposition lifting in that movie, but he's a security guy. Great.
Yeah.
But then the books make so much of that and paint this great Star Wars storytelling that in Phantom Menace, he's the hero. But then we learn from some books like, okay, but he's kind of got that fear of what if we have to build up the security. We have to be ready for attack. And that great discussion of how much of that is practical and how much of that is giving into fear, so that he's given into that fear. So by the time his old buddy from Naboo, Palpatine, becomes a horrible dictator, he doesn't realize it because he's just all on board about security. Yeah. And to see this hero become a Moff, become Moff Panaka, and then and now I'm kind of questioning whether I should say all these things because I want people to check these out. You know what? I'm going to stop myself and just say, in Rebel Rising, there are some moments where multiple points of wonderful delicious Star Wars storytelling converge on Panaka, and it is beautiful.
Yeah. All roads lead to Panaka.
But it's a perfect portrait
Yeah.
Of how somebody could go from being aligned to the movie and coded to the movie as a good guy to somebody making mistakes and writhing in tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's spread out over multiple books. And I think for some people that'd be like, well, yeah, they should just lay out the story and tell it in order. And like, I get that some stories should be, but this is the gift of the tapestry. When it does work, it's the reward, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I keep having this growing list of, I'm going to reread that Star Wars book. And I just know I'll probably never get to it. So I'll get there eventually. Rebel Rising.
Yeah. Yeah. One other detail for me, there's a ton of them. This could go on and on. But one other thing I wanted to shout out, I love the detail in Bloodline that the New Republic was set up to try to have as many voices as possible, to all express themselves. And these parties grew out of that. And that's a natural thing that's going to happen where you're going to have parties. And it all worked while Mon Mothma was still there because she held it together through political acumen and charm, and everybody respected her. Yeah. And when Mon Mothma left, they didn't quite have the system set up the way it should be, and it started to fall apart. And that's always just been one of those like, God, that can be so true of organizations. Of you think it works, but it's because you have a leader who really fills the gaps.
Yeah,
and when that leader leaves, it starts falling apart, and you realize the structure, the actual organization isn't as well structured as you thought. It was that person holding it together. I love that detail.
Yeah. And you mentioned Bloodlines. I mean, the fact that the galaxy didn't really know about Leia, Luke, and Vader, right?
That's kind of important, right? That's kind of a big deal.
And how I had another one of those moments of, oh yeah, I just thought the other way for 30 years. That it was all in the news that night. Battle of Endor won. Luke and Leia, their father was the one behind it all. You just grew up thinking that. And I love and it makes so much more sense to go the other way.
But now I want to see the Ewok press release, the press conference.
Yeah. Dateline Endor. That was a giant moment. I think I forget that that happened in a book. So I want to go to Ken at the beginning of the podcast and say, make sure you're accepting of all mediums.
Yep. Keep your mind open, which is a good transition to us. I think maybe struggling a little bit more. We have both struggled at times with Star Wars comics to keep up, to remember details. I think in general, I like I know there's some comics you love, but some you struggle with. In general, I like most of them, but I do struggle to keep up, and I struggle sometimes to remember beats and details.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the challenge for you ultimately with the comics as a medium?
I wish I knew, because I get grumpy real fast, and then when you break it down, I'm like, well, no, I like in general everything, but I just something about first of all, I love collecting the covers of comics are art to me. I just love collecting that. That's one of the reasons I keep going back, even if I've stuck with comic series that I'm grown apart from just to get the covers. I really love that. So I want to start from there. I am a comic fan. The Star Wars comics I think have the room to take wilder swings, and it's more weird Star Wars, which is wonderful. And there's a thing out there, keep Star Wars weird, or keep, weird Star Wars the best Star Wars. That isn't always my favorite Star Wars. So I think that's the big challenge. Look, Jackson was a comic book creation, and I learned to love him in a short story that wasn't a comic, The comic didn't do it for me, his existence. So I think I start there, where we're going to go into some examples, and I'm going to say one I absolutely love of Aphra, but Aphra is this character I love. I love the character of Aphra. And there's a character showed up and I wasn't sure of. There's some episodes of Jedi Alliance where I was kind of not making fun, but just like, what are we getting here? Vader's got a fangirl. I don't understand what we're getting. And this character grows to be so much more and means so much to so many people. And I love that about Aphra. But I still don't connect with a lot of the beats in the story. Not her, the characters, or her point of view. A lot of the beats in the story, I'm like, it's just weird, man. And I can't follow it sometimes. That is my relationship with Star Wars comics in a nutshell. Every time I get an issue, I'm so excited. And I sometimes finish it and go, I don't really know what I read. I liked it. I don't know what I just took it. And there's some great, and we talk about some great, powerful moments. I'm singling out Aphra because, again, a character I love. And then I think to myself, man, it'd be so great to get that character in live action. And it's like, oh, there's the issue again, right? I'm not, until she's in live action, I guess I don't account. I don't, it so frustrates me that I can't just take it all as it stands.
Yeah, I think for Aphra, I mean, some of that's got to be wanting more people to see her, which obviously more people will see her if she had a live action Disney Plus show than just these great comics.
And she's perfect for it. It's perfect. That's exactly what you want. Yeah.
Yeah, and she isn't, like I've been saying, I've been rewatching Indiana Jones, and to really a lot of different moments to where they kind of bring in the ideas of archaeology or discovery, but to just specifically make this archaeologist character, and bring that energy into Star Wars, centered around this specific character. Lots of other things going on with Aphra as well, but that's the starting point, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think for me is, I grew up such a comic book person, and they have changed, and my relationship with them has changed. They used to just be so much more dense. There just used to be more words, right?
Yes.
Per issue. So I think I'm geared to feeling like I'm going to have a big meal, and they've just changed over the years. So it's, I feel like what I used to get in one issue is now like, oh, that's a 6-issue story arc. And if I sit down and read that, it'll be kind of the experience I had when I was a kid.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Which is, they've just changed. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just life. So I do prefer reading them as graphic novels so I can kind of get the full arc of the story. I think I also, because I just want to take in so much Star Wars, I often read them quickly and late at night. And I think I read them quickly with okay, I finally got this. I want to know what happens. I remember everybody was big about this beat or this moment, or I don't know what happens, but I'm really interested. And I read it quickly for what happens. And I think a part of it for me is, when I was a kid, my relationship with those comics was, I had nothing else.
Yeah.
So my one issue of New Teen Titans per month, I would read 17 times and study the pictures. And I don't have time to do that. We don't do comic reviews. In general, we did a big one of Rise of Kylo Ren, and now I think about that one all the time, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. And I wonder if part of it is, for me, is the I'm not taking as much time with the comics because you and I don't review them for ForceCenter.
It's so funny. I think you're right, and this is total our own experiences and taste. But yeah, I have almost every frame of G.I. Joe comics memorized from '84. Like I can tell you now what you know what I mean. Like Then the tank goes underneath the parade route. Because you're right. That was life. I literally read them 15 times a week. The same issues, Robotech comics, all this stuff. And, life changes, what goes on. And yeah, I don't spend time with them. And as much as we, come up on these microphones and say, engage with the story that presented to you, ask why. When it gets to the comics, it's a what for me. And I do flip through, pretty fast. There's less words, so you're looking at the pictures, which is
they're great pictures most of the time.
Beautiful art. And I think I close the page and go, all right, what happened? All right, I'll see where that goes. And that's on me. That's, again, none of this is on the creators.
No,
that's a lot of what this conversation is about today, of just like, how can you push past your own limitations? And I think that's it. And I'm excited. Like, we're going to go back into the Son of Dathomir arc. I can't wait to revisit that comic for the Clone Wars report and spend more time with it, because I just don't spend time with others.
Yeah, I think that's it for me. Is I because I'm just trying to keep up with the what, I don't get to spend as much time with it, and I enjoy the vast majority of the comics. I have some favorites, and I have art styles that I prefer more than others, and I have some stories where that kind of answers this question. Like, I think some of the Star Wars mainline sometimes for me answers more questions than I figured Luke picked up some lightsaber skills. I don't know if I felt like I needed. Here's who he trained with then. Like, it's fine, but I didn't need that answer, So I think for myself, probably because I grew up with the original trilogy, I think maybe I have a little pushback sometimes of I'm fine imagining it. I've been imagining it most of my life. In that, again, totally subjective, totally based on who I am, my age. It's not about the actual comics. It's about my relationship with the story.
Yeah, they take these giant swings. The War of the Bounty Hunters was a tremendously giant swing by taking something that is actually pretty legit. Does Boba Fett go straight from Cloud City to Jabba's palace, and Chewie and Lando follow him shortly thereafter, and they just all stay there for almost a year? Or did something else happen? Yeah. And they take on those swings, take on those questions. And I think it's good, but I think I'm like you, I don't know. I've had my own thoughts on that for years, and I'll live with those.
Yeah. I just read the arc where very quickly after the events of Empire, they go back to Bespin. That one was, I thought it was I immediately had I have lived decades. And in my mind, I never went back to Bespin. So I had to be shut that down. Yep. But I had to. It was work. I had to. And that episode does a great job of showing all the characters all need things. They've all been through a massive trauma, and they need things emotionally and practically to move forward. And for me, I remember the moment it occurred to me of wait, is that Luke's same X-Wing in Return of the Jedi, or did he leave it at Bespin?
Right.
And I've been upset about that for years. Now answered.
Yeah, it's a chat. No, I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad I'm just laying it on the table. Just some challenges. Yeah, I remember there's that first big one. Remember it was issue 1, 2 of the main Star Wars mainline in 2014, where Vader and Luke confront each other. They're stand in front of each other. Yep. And that was I had to have some thoughts on that, private thoughts on what I thought about that.
Yeah, no, but a bunch of stuff gets fleshed out. Leia in particular, her relationship with Alderaan, all sorts of great stuff happens in those comics. So let's talk about some favorite moments of story, canon lore from comic books. What are some favorite moments for you?
Absolutely a lot. One of the ones I love is in a Darth Vader annual. Chuck Wendig wrote it. It is Darth Vader in the Petronaki Arena on Geonosis, going back and having memories, man. And there again too, there's the one with Ahsoka, just Vader going through the Rolodex of things that haunt him, and they do great. You get to see some panels with some Padme and Anakin art from Attack of the Clones. I just love it, man, and I just love that Vader feels, man. He's more machine now than man, sure, but there's so many ghosts dancing inside him. And for you and I mentioned earlier, we grew up with just everything was great for 19 years. It wasn't, and it just to see it, I thought it was a great little moment.
Yeah, I also love that idea. That's one of those moments that really works for me, of taking something that's in the movies and exploring it. That he's I'm not a big fan of the Death Star. If you need a weapon to spread fear, I'm right here. Yeah. There's always kind of with what do you need the Death Star for? I liked that myself. What are some other moments?
Also, the relationship of Poe and Leia and the Poe Dameron comic, I think I've mentioned, I haven't mentioned it in a while, but I used to mention it all the time, but that issue 14 of the Poe Dameron run, which came out post Carrie Fisher's passing and dealt with her talking about eventually she won't be here. Luminous beings are we, but also Poe and it was kind of, I'll be honest, it was kind of a Last Jedi almost repeated the beat of Poe needing to learn and Leia teaching him. Not contrasting and comparing, but just that's kind of what it was. Love all the stuff in there. The Poe Dameron run, which, by the way, Poe Dameron run has some of the weirdest stuff in it I've ever read in Star Wars, and that I sometimes struggle with. But overall, it really was. You got to spend time with Poe, and especially after Force Awakens, we hadn't spent a ton of time with Poe yet. I love everything about that. And that one has the specific issue where there's the conversation of war veterans talking about Starkiller Base, and then one of them's talking about the battle over the Death Star in New Hope, and you turn the page and it's R2 and another Astromech. Oh my God, it's some of the best stuff.
It's such a great insight on the droids and what they talk about and their attitudes and sharing all their details, the comparing and contrasting of the adventures they went on with their organics and how they handled it and what they saw. Oh, so great. That Poe Dameron run, I think I read in like 2 sittings. Like, I think I had that of like I'm finally going to check this one out. And then like, oh no, it's 2 a.m.
Yes. Yeah.
And did that for 2 nights in a row. Cause I enjoyed it so much. Leia needing money. So, trying to sell some of her mother's clothes, like,
yeah.
It's really powerful and painful beats in some ways. So yeah, that's an absolutely great one. I think for me, I know I mention it all the time, but it's because I'm obsessed. That Rise of Kylo Ren run, 4 comics, 4 issues. I'm still mystified as to why it exists. Like, I totally get from the perspective of, hey, the Knights of Ren are going to be in Rise of Skywalker, but we don't really learn their backstory. Let's do it. Let's do a comic for their backstory. And then like, sure. And while we're there, we'll also recontextualize the destruction of Luke's temple. Will give you great insight into Ben's life experience and trauma, and will show you Luke's entirely functioning Jedi school and Luke kind of at his height as a true Jedi master in this 4-issue comic run. It is there's so much from that that's just cool. It's cool to see Luke with his functioning school, but it frames every conversation that we have about how Luke's life goes. Like, he had a functioning school. There were Jedi going around helping people, doing Jedi things. It was not fully fledged. There weren't thousands, but it was up and running. And really seeing Ben at the time having that mysterious voice and seeing how Snoke literally did play the like, look, I'm just the kind of the person who's going, yeah, no, your uncle isn't perfect, so maybe you want to explore some other things. I'm just trying to support you, Ben, and seeing that manipulation on the page, you know? It also sets up that great idea of the Knights of Ren have that sort of dark side test of the most difficult kill, which contextualizes The Force Awakens massively. So there's so much in that 4-issue comic.
Yeah, and that's one too. Yeah, not saying it's lesser than in the comic, but man, you just adapt that to a 90-minute animated movie. I think you do well.
I think so too. You have a home run there. The entire Charles Soule Vader run is great. But I think in particular the building of the castle and the dark comedy of trying to get it exactly right. And the general mission, just that Vader early on is not letting go of Padme. Yeah, that is so. To me, feels so right. I love seeing that.
Totally.
Final one for me is it was an early one in the comics run, but Shattered Empire. I think there's a lot to not sleep on there.
Yes.
Leia on Naboo sensing Maul is just great. I love the story that kind of immediately after Endor, Luke isn't like, great, I am the powerful Jedi, I will become a general. Where do you need me? He's like, you guys do your military stuff. I'm going to collect trees because they're special Jedi trees.
Yep.
That's a crucial Luke idea to me. Like that right away. He's like, I'm not fighting a war for anyone. I'm preserving the past and learning about it.
It's a giant. I'm glad you mentioned Shattered Empire. It's a giant step for Luke. Like you're so right. Again, talking about what you and I might have grown up thinking, right? And then you got great, Heir of the Empire and the EU stuff starts expanding it. I love and those ones deal with Luke learning things too. I want to be clear, but like I love this left turn. Cool. Peace out. I gotta go. Share Bay, you want to come with me? Yeah. Love it. It's a great 4 issues if you all haven't checked it out.
Yeah. So clearly, even though we have our struggles with the comics, we find great value in them and could go on and on.
But no. But the thing about that is, and I want to highlight one more too. But the thing about it is, I have sometimes they're not on the front of my Rolodex. And I have to remember, or even here in this episode, like, oh, you're right. You made me think of this. I don't have them down in my brain like I do the shows and the movies. And that's just the way it's probably always going to be. Can't let that hold me back. And the final one, the relationship of Magda Tolvan and Afra. Again, talk about great Afra stuff. Here comes this Imperial officer, very comic booky. She's got some cybernetic things going on there with her neck. I remember, right? Yeah. And then she's in charge of the security on Edu. And you're picking up right after Rogue One. And to go from that, and then she searches Yavin after Yavin 4. She's in charge of like the search team there to see what was left behind by the rebels. And then she gets in this complicated relationship with Afra. It has one of the best kiss frames, panels in Star Wars comics. It's great, and their relationship that comes and goes. It's great stuff if y'all haven't taken a peek at that.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to read some more Afra. That whole time thing. Let's talk about video games. We are both big fans of the storytelling in Battlefront 2 and Jedi Fallen Order. I know people think highly of the Squadrons video game. Do you think that playing through the beats of the story creates a different relationship to them?
Oh, yeah. If I could play the comics, I'd probably like them a little bit more or just read them more. Yeah. Yeah, and until this very moment, I don't think I had connected just simple video game immersion factor, right? Which is weird because I won't shut up about Red Dead Redemption 2 or managing a baseball team. But taking Iden through her journey, as short as it was in that version of the story, it made a world of difference. Yeah,
I guarantee you there are pivotal Vader moments in the comics that I've read and enjoyed that I gotta go, oh yeah. I do not have to go, oh yeah, when I escaped Darth Vader in the Inquisitor's Fortress, right? Because I did that. I barely survived Darth Vader.
I did it.
I did that. No, we all did that. And it is. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just the way different mediums at different points in our life affect us emotionally. Like I remember some of the relationship with Iden and her father in the absolute terror of the Sentinel droids with Palpatine's face, which are spread all through canon from comics books to books to video games, and acknowledged on Mandalorian of the actual Operation Cinder. But just even that cutscene of kind of feeling the horror of this weird, creepy robot, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, man.
And we get to be right there for it. So what are some favorite moments of story, canon, lore from video games for you?
I think can I just put Battlefront 2? No, we talk often the Del Meeko and Luke scene. I think that's really important stuff, and also one of the most video gamey levels ever. You're just slashing bugs, right? Like it's to have that weight. I mean, it's now. I think that cutscene, that all that stuff's been more celebrated now to a level where I feel like I stopped talking about it because I think our work here is done. We've told people to pay attention, and everyone found it themselves organically, to be honest. But I love all that stuff. You mentioned it too. I was thinking about some of my favorite moments in Battlefront 2. And it's Iden with her father, man. Garrick Versio at the very end. Just everything he says and realizes, and the pain of still him kind of almost going down with the ship because he feels he deserves it now at this point. And she's made the right decision, this daughter of the Empire. It's some great father-daughter stuff, which we don't get a ton of in Star Wars as much. Yes, Leia Vader, no, it's there, but you know what I mean? I love that. I love being there for it. And I felt it, and it wasn't the way I thought I was saving him, right? You know, I was running to clicking my X buttons and my R1s to go save Dad. And when he kind of backs away, it got me, man. It got me. I love that moment.
Yeah, I think that whole story of a moment where a die-hard Imperial who's maybe not been able to open their eyes and see the truth, partially because they come from this core world where everything's great.
Mm-hmm.
And they're defending it from, vicious insurgents. And to play through that beat where your home world is being attacked just out of vengeance and spite, because a droid with the face of a dead man told you to, and you see the emptiness of it, and you're experiencing that because you're running around as the explosions go off,
Yeah.
Yeah, that beat is really important to me. The Luke on Pilio scene will always be amazing because as video games go, of like, I'm Luke Skywalker and I made 1,000 bugs explode by mashing the button. The actual video game play is fine, but the cutscene, we talked about so many beats, but the important one of that to me is the perspective of that, the fact that everybody is working not for Chancellor Emperor Palpatine, not for Sheev, but they're working for an evil wizard, and they really, really don't know. The vast majority of people just don't know. And the way that's written of Del Mico being like, well, why would the Emperor have something where you need to use the Force to access it?
Yeah.
And Luke's response about, I think paraphrasing about like, maybe it was wrong for you to be afraid of Jedi. Yeah. Maybe there are things more frightening than a Jedi,
Yeah.
Such a great way for that dime to drop of like, fill in the dots. Yeah.
He could have just looked at Del.
Yeah, that is a thinker. Why don't you think about that, Del? There's a ton that I absolutely love in Jedi Fallen Order, deeply moved by it, BD1 stuff, all that. But I think in some ways, Sarah's journey made me feel the Inquisitor's story, right? It's one thing to be told, hey, they were Jedi, but they got tortured into this. And I love the Inquisitor's story and all that. But to feel it in this video game of you're playing through and you know that Sarah's in pain and doubting and you don't know why, and then to learn why and to see why and to just experience it in such a visceral way of that, how awful the Inquisitor program is. It made me like the Inquisitor story so much more, and makes me even more excited for things like Kenobi because of this video game.
Yeah, the trauma, the path forward from that stuff that Fallen Orders deal with is so powerful and so powerful for a lot of people. And I think the Inquisitor stuff, it hit me in a different way that I wasn't expecting, and I love the twists and turns of it there. And you're right. Will we deal with that in Kenobi with Reva, right? Yeah, still learning the new characters here, huh? I was almost expecting it, right? Like, you can't just show me a badass Inquisitor. Give me a chance to see what's going on inside their head because of Fallen Order.
Yeah, exactly. And that is, I think, a great way to look at this question of does it matter what medium it's told in, where we're looking at a live action Obi-Wan Kenobi television show and going, I hope it lives up to the narrative of that video game.
Yeah, no. And again, this is why at the end of the day here, we always try to focus on what we love, to find what you love, because once you do that, you start connecting to a lot more things than you think.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously there's a lot of other places that Star Wars stories get told. So I wanted to throw a catch-all at you, Ken. Are there any other moments of story canon lore that you love from audio adventures, trading cards, the back of an action figure, another book, anything?
I do love the Return of the Jedi trading cards, because talk about having them memorized. And you can pick up little bits of information that maybe weren't in the movies, including, they're called Ewoks. I didn't know that. No. You know what I mean? Like, I love, and I spent so much time with, like, I didn't have the complete collection as a kid, but I had what I had. And now it's the point where I've bought in some Return of the Jedi trading cards at conventions, or had some gifted to me, and I'll get a new card, or I'll see a new card and be like, I don't really know that one. It's because I didn't have it when I was 10 and I didn't look at it 50 times a week, daydreaming about Star Wars stories.
Yeah. You know what? I'll go in on that. I will say thank you to the Return of the Jedi trading cards for teaching me the word pensive.
Oh, yeah.
I believe it's a pensive Luke Skywalker stares out. The pensive is somewhere in the title. Pensive Skywalker, or Luke is pensive. I can't remember exactly what it is. I'll look it up, but I always remember every time I hear the word pensive, like, the word from Star Wars. Final question here for you, Ken. Should every episode of a Star Wars television show end with Jocasta Nu telling you where to find more information?
Yes, absolutely should. I've been watching the HBO show Winning Time, and I'm not even a huge basketball fan, but it's a fascinating kind of story there. At the end of it, they have Rick Fox do an after show, right? It's really just an after show, but it's like kind of built into the show. And they start. I'm not talking about like Anthony Carboni hosts the Kenobi after show. I'm talking about Jocasta Nu pops up, says, "You just watched the show. Here's more for you. This is a great idea."
Yeah, I would love it if at the end of the first episode of Ahsoka, Jocasta Nu was like, "Let me take you over here to this part of the archives," and like a holocron or a data book opens up and it floats up the Ahsoka suggestions from this week.
He mentioned a love from his past. This is Duchess Satine. That's what you need.
Here is her info file. Study it. Keep it in the library, though. And then we can have a moral of the story told to us by Dexter Jettster, always.
Of course. That's even better. Them together.
Full victory for Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts as we wrap up here?
No. Just we can see, again, where the journey goes. And I think it's fine as Star Wars fans for us every now and then to be like, hey, this is where my focus is. And hey, a lot of you, I know people are like, nah, man, Rebels is my Star Wars. I don't even really like the original trilogy. All that is fine. We are here. We're lucky. We're blessed to be celebrating all the stories. And then choose to focus on what you love. And then, like I said, might lead you to bigger areas of celebration, more than you'd even expect.
Yeah, well said. And I really, really do like being able to explore, big picture thoughts and opinions and examine like, well, what's just subjective? What's just, because of my life and my experience. And I've really, really enjoyed the High Republic comics, but it's so great for me to go on social media and like see people so deeply engaged and like engaged in a way that like, I was like, oh, I understand that because that's the way I felt when Robin became Nightwing. That to have that level of just pure emotional investment. I love seeing all the different parts of Star Wars that people love and with different levels of intensity at different times of their lives. And I think that for me is ultimately the big picture. Is I love that Star Wars is this massive tapestry that the movies and maybe the television show reaches the biggest audiences, but all of these stories reach different people at different moments and are just as powerful, just as valid.
Absolutely. Well said.
All right. With that, you want to tell people where they can find us?
Absolutely, friends. We're the ForceCenter podcast. We sometimes dig into big themes. Other times we wonder, will we have more time to read comic books? And you can find us on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. You can follow us on Instagram and YouTube as well. We have a Facebook page, ForceCenter Podcast. You can like us there. Podcasts available on a lot of different spots, including Acast, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and a whole lot more. Just search and find us. Merch is available at teepublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And you can go to patreon.com/ForceCenter to support us directly. You can follow me at Ken Napzok. Go to my website, kennapzok.com for more. Joseph, where can they go to follow you?
Yeah, you can find me Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can check out my website, josephscrimshaw.com, for all my other comedy adventures. But for now, for myself, for Jocasta Nu, who has a great arc in a comic book, this has been ForceCenter.